Well, we finally made it. The modern Doctor Who era has begun. 2005. 10 years after Downtime, 9 years after the beginning of the Eighth Doctor's adventures, and many, many years after Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred walked off stage and into the history books. Will this new Doctor, played by Christopher Eccleston, stand up, or will he end up falling like the second Doctor as he went back to Earth? The first story of the new era starts pretty simply with a look into the life of Rose Tyler, her mom Jackie, her boyfriend Mickey, whose actor got into some trouble recently, but let's not get into that. And her job at a local boutique. Unfortunately, she runs afoul of some Autons who nearly kill her, but luckily the Doctor is there to grab her hand and tell her to run and save her. Unfortunately, he also blows up her boutique. Thankfully, there was no one else in there except Autons. And she ends up jobless. Eventually, the Doctor meets up with her again because she apparently picked up an Auton arm and brought it home. And the Doctor, still wielding a sonic screwdriver, picks up the transmission from the arm, and after a brief struggle with it, which looks kind of silly, the Doctor decides to trace the signal, but it's all over the place. Luckily, he can find it eventually, because that's just what the Doctor does. Unfortunately, the Autons capture Mickey and replace him with a pretty obvious copy, only no one notices until the Doctor rips the copy's head off. And now, he has a means to really look for the Nestine consciousness, which is back in full force. And when the Doctor gets questioned by Rose, he gives a spiel about how he can feel the Earth falling and tumbling, and how if we let go of the skin of the Earth, who knows? But he doesn't really give a lot of info. Also, Rose gets a look at the new interior of the TARDIS, which looks kind of coral-y, but still good. Seems the Doctor redecorated again, and he downsized. In the movie, the TARDIS interior was massive, but now it's just small-ish. Eventually, the Doctor locates where the Nestine consciousness is, and the transmitter which will activate all the plastic on Earth, which ends up being the London wheel, or that Ferris wheel that's on the Thames now. That's the transmitter. Meanwhile, Rose goes on the internet looking for anyone who knows who the Doctor might be, and finds a guy who's got some research, and it turns out he was right. Unfortunately, when the Nestine consciousness activates the arch, because the Doctor had brought some anti-plastic just in case, and the consciousness doesn't take it well. When all the plastic gets activated, the guy who Rose asked for help ends up getting killed by an Auton right in front of his wife and daughter. Very tragic. And Jackie nearly gets it too. Luckily, Rose, who channels a bit of Ace, swings out and knocks the Auton holding the anti-plastic into the Nestine consciousness, which is basically a vat of computer-generated glop. And the anti-plastic destroys it and shuts down all the Autons. just in time to save the day. And the Doctor, Rose, and Mickey, who survived his encounter, all make it out okay. And to top off Mickey's day, Rose essentially dumps him, deciding to go travel with the Doctor. And so, to really kick things off, the Doctor takes Rose into Earth's distant future, long time in the future, when the Earth is no longer inhabited by humans, I should say, and representatives from many, many galaxies, including the last human, which looks more like a face on a flap of skin connected to a brain, who Rose ends up calling a witchy trampoline, have come to view the Earth's destruction. Originally, a company held back its end for nostalgia purposes, kind of like how you keep an old house intact even though no one lives there. But the money ran out, and so people are going to watch as the Earth gets consumed by the sun, as it always should have been. Unfortunately, someone has sabotaged the space station they're on with these little spider robots, which proceed to use the solar shields on the station to kill first the director of the events and several other people when they resist, and nearly kills Rose for some reason. But the Doctor and a woman who's part tree manage to save the station at the cost of the tree woman's life, sadly. And we find out the reason the station was threatened was because Cassandra, the so-called last human, who's actually just not a half-breed like others, she decided to hold everyone to ransom. And there were casualties besides the tree woman and the director. And so, we see a bit of the Doctor's dark side. Earlier, with the Nestine, he mentioned having fought in a war and failing to save a planet belonging to the Nestine. That's why they were on Earth. And apparently, the Doctor has let some darkness in him, having fought in a war. We don't know with whom, but we know it left him willing to let Cassandra dry out and basically explode. When he returns her after she evacuated, before things went south. And after lamenting the end of the world, the Doctor and Rose head back to the present and get fish and chips. Kind of a dark episode. And things just keep getting darker. Because then they pay a visit to the guy who penned A Christmas Carol, whose name currently escapes me right now. Seems the town in which he's based is suffering from a bout of hauntings and potential walking corpses. But it's all being kept hush-hush by the lead mortician and his assistant, a young woman who seems to be psychic. Eventually, it's revealed that the ghosts are actually gaseous beings from an alternate reality, and they wish for a few corpses to inhabit. Now, the reason they chose corpses is because Corpses tend to generate gas when they rot, and they need gas to survive. Right now, they're staying alive using the gas-based light system that Victorian London utilizes. Unfortunately, when the doctor has the psychic lady open the doorway for them, which kills her, by the way, sort of. The doctor finds out that there are a lot more of these ghosts, and they will kill to get the corpses they want. They kill the mortician. And they nearly kill the author, the doctor, and Rose. But luckily, they're able to manipulate the gas systems of the house they're in order to weaken the spirits. And the psychic woman volunteers to use a lighter to blow them all up because she's technically already dead. Once they leave, she's a goner. And with that, the day is saved, but there are costs. And the author decides he's going to write about them because while he's written fictions about ghosts, he hasn't written about actual ghosts. Of course, the doctor, who admits to being a fan, admits to Rose that this particular author is not long for this world. He's going to pass on soon. And so he doesn't get a chance to write anything. And so, on to the next adventure, which hopefully will be more lighthearted. They arrive back in modern times a year later, 2006. And as soon as Rose steps off the TARDIS, she's locked into this time period. Yeah. And things haven't gone well with Mickey and Jackie. Jackie's become desperate to find Rose, putting up wanted posters. And poor Mickey, he's been put through the ringer because he was accused of kidnapping Rose. Eventually, things are straightened out, but not before Jackie slaps the doctor. Oh boy. But before we get to explore this bit of family drama a little more, an alien spaceship lands in the Thames River, even clipping Big Ben. And the doctor, not wanting to get in the way of things, decides, since this is technically history playing out, he's just going to watch it on TV. But he just can't help getting a closer look. So he ends up taking the TARDIS into the building where they're examining the alien they found. Only it turns out to be a pig, just an ordinary pig with technology in it to make it look anthropomorphic. Problem is, the technology that would make this hoax work doesn't exist. Not unless it was alien technology, which it actually is. Yeah, aliens faking an alien landing. And to suss out what's going on, they bring about a whole bunch of minor representatives from the government who have one unifying theme. They're all very, very fat. And it's revealed why, because a family of beings from the planet Raxacoricephalopatorius, say that 5 times fast, who call themselves the Slovene. That's their last name, by the way. They have hatched a plan to get control of Parliament, use government authority to launch nuclear weapons, and have everyone else use their nukes. And then when the Earth has been irradiated, they're going to sell off the pieces for starship fuel. And unfortunately, that also involves getting whoever could help deal with the aliens, including the Doctor, into one room and killing them. So after one of the Slitheen reveals itself, basically crammed into a suit made of human skin, that's why they gotta be fat, and why they also have gas problems. The things they wear to make them shrink down cause gas buildup. They use special badges that they handed out to everyone to zap them. And one of the Slitheen targets Rose and Harriet Jones, a low-level representative whose big concern is cottage hospitals. I've never heard of that before. Who just happened to be there that day. But thankfully, in part 2, the Doctor manages to thwart their efforts, and we find out that because the Slitheen gas smells like bad breath, their chemical composition becomes volatile when exposed to stuff like vinegar. And so when a Slitheen attacks Jackie and Mickey, they kill it by throwing vinegar on it, causing it to explode, and thoroughly schmutz up poor Mickey's house. Luckily, before the Slitheen, managed to launch the nukes, the Doctor has Mickey hack into the government website to launch a nuke at the place where the Slitheen and Rose and everybody else are, 10 Downing Street. In order to take them all out. Now, the reason the Doctor and Rose and Harriet Jones survive is because they get put into a closet that is lined with a couple inches of steel. And before anyone panics after the destruction of the Slitheen and the building they're in, Harriet Jones steps up as the only representative of the government left, and something that irked the Doctor about her finally clicks. She's going to be the next Prime Minister, and she's going to usher in a golden age for Britain. And so, with the day saved, the Doctor and Rose decide to head on to their next adventure, which finally brings the Doctor's oldest enemy back into the forefront. The two of them land in 2012 in the subterranean lair of this corporate fat cat named Van Staten, who likes to erase people's memory when he fires them, and who seems to have control over the presidency. He's basically not a good character. I mean, he's well crafted, he's just not a good person. And the reason the Doctor and Rose are there is because they heard a distress call. Fun fact, originally the creature they were supposed to find is one that will end up being recycled for a future Doctor Who episode, but let's get into that later. For now, when the Doctor manages to get into the inner vault by technically cooperating with Van Staten, the tortured creature that the Doctor has come to rescue is in fact a Dalek. Its weapons disabled, its casing damaged. And this brings out the worst in the Doctor, because as it turns out, it was a war that the Time Lords and the Daleks were fighting with each other. It seems all that business with the 4th and 5th Doctors ended up culminating in a time war, which brought out the worst in the Time Lords and brought out the best in the Daleks. Unfortunately, the best of the Daleks is also the worst. And so, the Doctor decides to destroy the Dalek quite gleefully. Luckily, Van Statten stops him, and in the ensuing chaos, the Dalek reveals that it's not entirely helpless. Its plunger device, its manipulator, can crush a human skull if it gets too close. And so, when the Dalek breaks free, it goes to a nearby computer using the internet to repair itself. And so, it can now zap people, even sending its death ray through a sprinkler system in the form of arcing currents to kill a whole bunch of people like that. And so, when the Doctor confronts it a second time, he starts frothing at the mouth and ordering it to kill itself, ridding the universe of its filth. It's the last Dalek, and it should just die. And the only thing that snaps the Doctor out of his rage is the fact that the Dalek is so impressed, he wants to make the Doctor a Dalek. Or should I say, he says the Doctor would make a good Dalek. One of the main reasons why it was able to break free was because it tricked Rose into touching its casing. It seems it was able to absorb just enough energy from a time traveler in order to break its chains. But this sort of backfired on it, because when the Doctor, Rose, and Van Statten get separated, while it does kill one of Van Statten's soldiers by elevating itself up the stairs while everyone was gloating that the Dalek was trapped, it chose not to kill Van Statten or Rose. Instead, it has Rose lead it to an outer wall, which it then blasts, allowing itself to feel sunlight on its body once it opens up its casing. And when the Doctor shows up, fanatic about shooting it and destroying it once and for all, Rose points out that it couldn't kill Van Statten, it couldn't kill her, it's starting to change. And then it clicks for the Dalek. Touching Rose allowed it to integrate human aspects into itself. It's not pure Dalek anymore. When it realizes this, it orders Rose to order it to kill itself. So she obliges. And so the last Dalek is vaporized once and for all. Van Statten gets arrested and has his mind wiped by one of the other staff members. And Adam, a young man who helped the Doctor at one point and gave him the blaster that was necessary to take out the Dalek, or would have been necessary, Rose invites Adam to travel with her and the Doctor. And while the Doctor is reluctant at first, he acquiesces in the end, because Rose likes him, although it's going to have to be platonic because he's gay. And so the three go traveling together. And this is a very familiar feeling. Two humans and the Doctor and the TARDIS. So they head into the far future, where humanity should be experiencing another golden age, serious prosperity. Except something went wrong. Television has taken over everyone's life. And it's all controlled on a space station. And eventually, it's found out that a creature called a Jagaroth, that's Jagaroth, is stunting humanity's growth for its own purposes. And the Doctor and Rose are very nearly destroyed. Luckily, a spy, which managed to infiltrate the system, was able to tell them that cold is what keeps the Jagaroth alive. So they pull the plug on the cooling system, which quickly causes the Jagaroth to melt, basically, and causes humanity to lose its TV for a while, which is a good thing. Too much TV makes for a bad life. Unfortunately, young Adam hasn't been idle this whole time. He decided to take the fact that he's in the future and use it to his advantage. He borrowed Rose's phone, which can call the past thanks to a modification from the Doctor. He's able to translate various languages and info thanks to a gift from the TARDIS, which Rose found out about in the End of the World episode. And he puts a whole bunch of information on his mom's answering machine in the past. The Doctor finds out and bans him from being a companion. He also manages to destroy the incriminating answering machine, and he warns Adam that the brain modification he did to himself in order to get the information, no one can know about it, because then he'd be a science project. Unfortunately, his mom finds out 2 seconds later, and we later find out what happened after that via a comic book. Eventually, the Doctor and Rose decide they've had enough of the future, they're going to go back to the past. And Rose decides she's going to see her father. Unfortunately, her father has died. In fact, she wants to go to the day he died and witness the event because of a story. Her mom told her that after he was hit by a car, which sped off, didn't even stop to see if he was okay, jerk. That when he died, he was alone. There was no one around. So she wants to be there to hold his hand. But she chickens out. So she asks the Doctor for a do-over, which he's reluctant to do because it could cause a paradox. But she gives him the puppy dog eyes, and he acquiesces, only for her to save her father and run right out in front of her past self and the Doctor's past self, both of which vanish almost instantly. This causes a paradox. Phones start broadcasting the very first phone message between the guy who invented the phone and his work partner. Radios start playing Never Gonna Give You Up, and the car that hit Rose's dad gets stuck in a loop. It appears, then disappears. And, to top it all off, huge bat-like creatures start flying around, eating people. Eventually, the Doctor has to herd the survivors into a church because not even the TARDIS is safe. It turns into a regular police box. But while Rose and her dad slowly tell each other the truth about themselves, her being a time traveler and he being kind of a jerk, not violent, just neglectful, and not really as good a father and husband as he should be. The Doctor realizes that the TARDIS is still somewhat alive, and if he can get it in the church, he might be able to use it to save everybody, including Rose's dad. Unfortunately, when Rose and her dad try to convince Jackie of the truth by holding baby Rose, that causes a paradox, which allows the Time Bats to get inside the church and devour the Doctor and destroy the TARDIS. And ultimately, it's up to Rose's dad to let himself die and save the day. The needs of the many outweighed the needs of the one at this point. And so he goes to his end, knowing that his offspring becomes just an all-around great person. And Rose gets to hold his hand as he dies, and history changes. Because Jackie does remember someone, an unknown woman, holding her husband's hand as he dies. And that saves everyone. The Time Bats vanish. The people come back, including a young Mickey. And so, having learned this hard lesson, Rose and the Doctor head back out. This time landing in wartime Britain, because they stumbled across an alien ambulance which was on a collision course with Earth. Eventually they find it, but it's empty. They also meet Captain Jack Harkness, who is attracted to basically anyone. Men, women, anthropomorphic, whatevers. And Rose takes a shine to him because he's like the Doctor, only willing to be romantic. Also, the trio stumble on a mystery. A child keeps getting spotted in various places around London, sporting a gas mask and saying the words, "Are you my mummy?" in a really weird, monotone way. And also, in one of the hospitals, are more people wearing gas masks, only they're not wearing them. They're actually grafted to their skin. And each person is sporting a strange V-shaped wound on their hand. And they seem to be dead but not dead. And every time you touch them, or anyone who touches them, becomes like them. Unfortunately, eventually it's revealed that the disease is airborne, and the Doctor who explains it to our Doctor quickly transforms in a very frightening fashion into an empty person. It's like their very souls have gone. And in part 2 of this adventure, it's revealed that the empty child is actually the brother of a young woman who has sort of taken it upon herself to look after the local kids who are still stuck in London during the Blitz. And she quickly surmises that the local butcher, well, he's having a fling with another man who, at the time, is married. So she uses that info to sort of blackmail him. Now, it's not very ethical. I mean, but then again, it's the 40s, and homosexuality has kind of a bad history in certain parts of the world. But the young woman is good at heart. She cares for the kids, except for the empty kid. But it's quickly realized that that kid is not her brother. He's her son. Turns out she's not a teenager, she's closer to 20, and she never married. Yep. Scandal. But eventually the Doctor realizes that The reason that that space ambulance was empty was because it wasn't empty. It contained these nanoparticles that heal all wounds. Basically, they're designed to heal up armies that have been decimated by war. Only it got its circuits crossed and it started turning healthy people into zombies. But when the doctor convinces the young woman to hug her son and admit that she's his mom, the nanogenes recognize the DNA and reset themselves. And with a little push from the doctor, everyone who was infected becomes restored. Just this once, everybody lives. And even a lady who lost her leg when she was younger grew it back. So, the day is saved, including with the help of Jack, who stops a bomb from falling on their immediate position, but has to sacrifice his ship. Luckily, the Doctor invites him aboard the TARDIS, and so the Doctor, Rose, and Jack fly off into the next adventure, dancing. Unfortunately, they run afoul of an old friend. One of the Slovene has survived the events of the aliens in London / World War III incident and set herself up as a governor in Cardiff. And the reason the Doctor, Rose, and Jack are there is because there's some sort of rift in Cardiff, some sort of dimensional tear, a naturally occurring thing that the Doctor can use to restore some lost power to the TARDIS. No unique substances this time, just a quick stop, and soon they'll fly away. Unfortunately, they can't just be idle, because the Slovene lady, she plans to utilize purposefully faulty nuclear energy facility that she's having built, go into meltdown to tear open the Cardiff Rift and use that energy to power a device which will hopefully get her home. So the Doctor plays a game of cat and mouse with her. First a merry chase involving teleporters, then having a sit-down dinner where she tries to kill him repeatedly and he thwarts her again and again to a level that's darn near comical. And eventually she reveals that if she goes home, it's a death sentence. She's got a death mark. And what she really wants is a second chance. So she has the Doctor take the device she was going to use aboard the TARDIS in order to help her get home and face her end with dignity. But it was a trap. She takes Rose hostage, threatening to rip her throat out, because the Slovene have actual talons for that purpose, and demands to be taken somewhere else. Meanwhile, the device she had taken aboard the TARDIS starts messing with it, causing the TARDIS console to open up, and while everyone knows to look away, Miss Slovene doesn't. And the energy causes her to revert back to an egg, because the TARDIS knew what she really wanted, a fresh start. So the Doctor is going to take her egg back to Rex and drop her off with a new family, where hopefully she won't have to become a supervillain. Then after that, the Doctor, Jack, and Rose are transmitted back to the future. A couple centuries after the incident aboard the television station. Turns out it was still going strong. Someone or something has set up lethal game shows like Big Brother and Weakest Link and Fashion Makeover, which ultimately are all fatal. And the winners of these contests, while not immediately killed, are taken somewhere and are never seen again. But it turns out there's a reason that people keep disappearing. It seems the force behind the power vacuum that was left behind when the station went dark was filled by Daleks. Somehow, someway, the Emperor's spaceship survived the Time War. Now remember, we haven't seen the Emperor since Evil of the Daleks, back in the Troughton era. So somehow, he survived the Time War and the Time Lords didn't. And it's been playing the long game. It's been using humans to rebuild its ranks, taking bits of DNA that are compatible and turning that DNA into Daleks. Unfortunately, they know in their hearts that they're not pure Dalek, and so they've all gone insane, worshipping the Dalek Emperor like a deity. And so the Emperor believes itself to be a deity. And the Doctor decides enough is enough, and it's time to take out the Daleks once and for all, but he's got to have time. So he has Captain Jack recruit the humans who are aboard the station to fight the Daleks as best they can, even though their weapons are practically useless. And he sends Rose back to the present in the TARDIS, giving her one last message. Let the TARDIS die and have a good life. Be fantastic. And so ultimately, all the humans are killed, including Captain Jack. And eventually the Daleks start bombing whole continents, including the Australasian zone mentioned in Enemy of the World back in the Troughton era. That's another reference. But the Doctor manages to set up his device, but it's not properly calibrated. He's going to destroy all the humans on Earth and all the Daleks in the sky, and himself. But there are other human colonies, so humanity does have a shot, as long as the Daleks are destroyed. But he just can't bring himself to do it. The Dalek Emperor calls him out, asking him whether he's a coward or a killer. And the Doctor realizes he's a coward any day. And so, being the last survivor, he allows the Daleks to end him. But, in a Deus Ex Machina, Rose manages to use borrowed a truck and a chain to rip off a portion of the TARDIS console and absorbs the heart of the TARDIS into herself, allowing her to send it back to the station, somehow bringing Captain Jack back to life and kickstarting a whole franchise around him, and using her deity-like abilities to vaporize the Emperor and his impure Daleks. Unfortunately, the energy is killing her, so the Doctor has to make one final sacrifice. He kisses her, bringing the energy into himself, which makes him a deity, only he puts it back in the TARDIS. But the damage has been done. His body can't sustain itself any longer, and so, in order to save himself, after he saved Rose, and she saved him, the Doctor has to regenerate into David Tennant. And after commenting on the fact that he has new teeth, and that's weird, he decides to go to a planet called Barcelona and take Rose with him. And so, the Christopher Eccleston era of Doctor Who comes to a close. It was short, but sweet. Unfortunately, due to creative differences, Eccleston just couldn't be the Doctor for more than one season. But even though we only got a little, it was good. Tune in next time for the era of Doctor Who that most fans are most familiar with. Alon Z.